On to Crash Issue 3, the April 1984 issue. This cover is a rendition of Sherlock Holmes. This month, Crash interviewed Melbourne House, who were working on their Sherlock game, although that wouldn't be released for another 5 months. As usual, I'll go through the top 10 most highly rated games in this issue. Unusually for me, I had not actually played any of the games in this month's top 10 in the Spectrum's heyday. Let's find out what they are. No 10th placed game this month, but we have 2 games in joint 9th place. The first is Denis Through the Drinking Glass, written by Roger Taylor and released by a software house called Applications. The Prime Minister of the UK throughout the 1980s was Margaret Thatcher. This is a text adventure in which you play her husband, Denis Thatcher. The aim of the game is to reach the pub, but it's not as easy as it sounds. Crash found the game delightful and witty, although challenging. Written with the Quill adventure writing system, it is fast and responsive. They gave this 83%. This is very much a game of its time, and may not make much sense if you hadn't been in the UK in the 1980s. Even for text adventures of this era, I find this primitive. Many times, when you'd expect to be able to interact with an object, you get a stock "I can't" response. This, combined with the instant death you get if you enter the wrong location, make this a frustrating game. Next, also in 9th place, we have Fred. This was written by Charlie, Paco and Fernando of Interscomp, the development house that brought us Bugaboo the Flea in issue 1. In the UK, it was released by Quicksilver. In Fred, you're an explorer, collecting treasure from inside a pyramid, which is laid out as a maze. Crash felt that the name Fred didn't really do justice to what the game was about. They liked the graphics, but didn't find the game particularly thrilling or addictive. However, they gave it an overall rating of 83%. I agree with Crash here, the game started well. I liked the look and style of the game, and the character was easy to control. Ultimately, I found it quite boring. Aside from avoiding monsters now and then, nothing really seemed to happen. I wouldn't be interested in playing this again. In 8th place we have Invasion Force, written by Dominic Wood and released by Micromania. This was a game designed for the short-lived peripheral, the Stack Light Rifle. This is a cross between Space Invaders and Missile Command, with you using the rifle to fight off aliens who are trying to destroy your city. Crash found the use of the Stack Light Rifle in this game to be great fun, but thought the game would be worth buying for the graphics, even without the gimmick of the rifle. They gave this 84%. Unfortunately, without the Stack Light Rifle, this game cannot be played, so, although the graphics look smooth, I've not been able to try it out. It's a shame the developer didn't offer any alternative control options. In joint 6th place is Loony Zoo, written by Tony Barber and published by Phipps Associates. This is a platform game in which you have to cross a series of ledges to reach a button, and from there an exit. Crash noted the inspiration of Manic Miner on this game, although saying that it lacked the generous graphics of that game. But they enjoyed the level of the challenge of the game, and one reviewer found it difficult to pull the plug on. They gave this an overall score of 85%. Considering this game came out after Manic Miner, it is a pity that graphically it seems such a step back. The jumping feels sluggish in comparison, and the collision detection on the platforms is a bit odd. Nevertheless, I can see the appeal. Each screen feels challenging and consistent enough to be masterable. Manic Miner is of course superior, but this is somewhat enjoyable if you ignore the rudimentary graphics. Also in 6th place is Cyberzone, created by Raymond Fowlkes and released by Crystal Computing. This is an Invader-style game, your mission being to destroy a flying saucer which is sending various enemies your way. Crash described this as the best arcade shoot-'em-up this month, and indeed for some time. They enjoyed the fast-moving graphics, the sound effects, and the strategic elements of the gameplay. They gave this game a score of 85%. Both you and the aliens sent to attack you seem small. Nevertheless, the animation and gameplay is smooth. The game feels fast-paced, and for me, one of the more enjoyable ones from this month's issue. In 5th place is a 16K game created by Paul Curtis and Jack Wilkes and released by Softtech. This is Starblitz. This is a conversion of the Defender arcade game, where you fly your ship above the surface of a planet, shooting alien craft and rescuing humans. Crash considered this to be the best Defender clone yet seen from the Spectrum, with large, smooth and colourful graphics. Their only real criticism was that there was no joystick option. Crash gave this game a score of 88%. I find this to be a fast and responsive representation of the classic arcade game. I don't remember many Defender clones from when I owned a Spectrum initially. If you enjoy Defender, this will be worth a play. In fourth place, and the first of 3 awarded Game of the Month this month, we have Cavern Fighter from Bug Bite, written by John K. Jameson. This is based on the Scramble arcade game, and you fly your craft through a series of caves, pitting yourself against missiles, asteroids, and alien fighters. Crash were positive about the quick loading time of the game, and found it to be one of the most playable of the Scramble variants available at the time. They described the explosions to be vicious and realistic, although not spectacular. They considered this to be a high-quality version of the popular arcade game, and gave it 89%. This game is fast and challenging, as the caverns are quite claustrophobic. Melbourne House's Penetrator game will undoubtedly be the all-time classic Scramble clone for the Spectrum, but this is certainly a worthy variant. In joint second place, Bear Bovver was released by Arctic, and written by John Rittman, who would go on later to produce classic Spectrum games such as Match Day and Head Over Heels. This game is somewhat inspired by the arcade game Burger Time, although here you control a bear who has to knock batteries down off of a series of platforms whilst avoiding 3 Bovver bears and a dinosaur. Crash liked the cartoon quality of the graphics and the in-game music. They rated this title as one of the best that Arctic had produced. The overall rating was 90%, although they did not give it a Game of the Month award. This is a fun game, although the graphics are not as good as the later work that John Rittman did with Bernie Drummond. I'm not convinced that the characters look much like bears. The game is challenging, although the irregular layout of the platforms provides many opportunities to divert and avoid your antagonists. I enjoyed it and will come back to it again. Also in second place, and another Game of the Month, is Blue Thunder, written by Richard Wilcox and released by Richard Wilcox Software. Blue Thunder was based on a TV series of the same name. You pilot a jetcopter and your mission is to reach and attack an enemy base. Crash liked the realistic physics of the helicopter, praised the scrolling seascape, and found the first appearance of the enemy's nuclear reactor to be like a magic trick. The fire button has multiple functions depending on how long you hold it for, but reviewers were divided on whether this was a good thing. They gave the game 90%. Maybe I just don't like helicopter games, but, like Krakatoa last month, I just found this difficult to control. The key positions are awkward, and the overall presentation of the game is a little basic. This is not a game that I'd want to return to regularly. Finally, in first place we have Night Gunner, written by Rod Swift and released by Digital Integration. In this game you take the role of a gunner in a Second World War bomber. Your mission is to defend your plane against enemy attack as it travels to its destination, and then take control of the bombs to destroy the ground targets. Crash loved the 3D effects in this game and praised the detail, as well as the gradual ramp up in difficulty through the missions. They gave this 91% and, not surprisingly, a Game of the Month award. This was a fun shooter, nothing too complex, but well presented and smooth. The different stages of each mission added variety to the gameplay. Although not an all-time classic, I'd have to agree with Crash that it was probably the best game reviewed in this issue. Well worth a few goes. Although I had not played any of the top 10 games until now, there were a couple of games in this issue that I had previously played, so wanted to mention. Lords of Time was designed by Sue Gazzard and published by a software house that specialised in adventure games, Level 9 Software. This is a text adventure in which you time travel through 9 periods in history, finding 9 objects that will help you to defeat some evil Time Lords. Although Crash reviewed the game in this issue, they didn't actually give it a score. I'm not sure why. They gave a score to Denis Through the Drinking Glass, which was also a text adventure, so we don't know if it would have been in the top 10 had it been rated. But the reviewer described it as a brilliant adventure with a remarkable atmosphere. Despite its comparatively expensive price at £9.90, they considered this definitely worth the money. As a text adventure, there are no graphics to speak of. However, the descriptions were detailed for the time, and the overall quality of this adventure is high. It's a game I have returned to many times over the years, and feels less sprawling than some of the later Level 9 games tended to be. A game I played many times back in the day is Chequered Flag, written by Steve Kelly of Scion Software and released under the Sinclair label. It wouldn't be right to call this a simulation of Formula 1 racing, rather it is a simulation of driving a Formula 1 car around an empty track. Crash found this to be more of a simulation than an actual game, finding the graphics impressive for the time, but being left cold by the lack of any competitive aspects. They gave this an overall score of 71%. For me, this is an entirely nostalgia-driven choice. Compared to racing games today, and even some later in the Spectrum's life, there's no character to the different tracks, and no other cars to race against. Yet somehow it was fun at the time, and brings back memories today when I replay it. If you have enjoyed this, please like and subscribe to see more videos about retro games from Norlogic Retro.